Another part of your work that you touch on is the culture of belonging. You highlight that a lot in your work, and I wanted to ask you: are there any practical steps that organizations can take to create an environment where people on their team, their peers feel valued and included?
Okay, of course, because we're together, and I'm going to make up something, and I talk for a living. Uh, so let's let's flank that question, but the frontal assault first is I want to just give kind of a framework, my framework of belonging. Belonging is the fulcrum. On this side of the teeter totter, I have fitting in. And on this side of the fulcrum, I have contributing. And belonging is my arbiter, right? If I don't fit in, very difficult to belong. If I don't contribute, very difficult to belong. So, very short story.
Mm,
I got to Air University in 2019, January 23rd. I took the oath to the Constitution as a civilian and did not see it coming. I mean, they told me that I was going to do a pre-induction something or meeting, but I'll even back up from that. My first experience, my day one of service as a civilian, I was sitting outside of civilian personnel, and I look up, and there's a big frame that is dedicated to Senior Airman Chester McBride. And so I walk over and I'm reading this story, and it dawns on me that he's a fallen airman. Again, I don't have an experience, right? I mean, I was a high school teacher. We didn't have posters up of teachers who had been killed by the enemy in the line of duty.
right.
This was a new world. And so I couldn't have said it at the time because it was about 8, 10 months later that if we have time today, I'll talk about how the Valor Workout that we created at the leader development course in honor of Chester McBride was developed by Lieutenant Colonel Doug Freeman.
Mm, mm,
How on earth these things came together? What I would say today is that was the moment when the gravity started to sink in. Because the next thing I did was took this oath to the Constitution that my knees were shaking as I was talking, repeating back after the woman. I went home that night and I ordered a copy of the Constitution,
mm.
which, if you catch me, is always in my suit pocket. And here's why. I'm giving you everything that I've got today. I didn't know what I had given my oath to.
Mm.
January 23rd, 2019. I mean, look, I studied it in high school. I taught it in history. I read this thing backwards and forwards, asking myself, is this what it means to belong to something bigger than me? You see, because I didn't have that fitting in, it was hard to feel like I belonged. So
Mm.
then I back up and I ask myself, what are the things I can do to fit into this new organization? I bought the Constitution. I read it. I got an Air Force pin. I put it on my suit jacket. I started learning the acronyms. Literally, I studied acronyms at night. What does RTB mean? What's an LOA? What's an
Mhm.
LOR? Who's the FNG? That was me, by the way. Right? Because what I realized, I will share this. Over time, I had to slowly let go of this past life.
Mhm.
I didn't talk about the books I wrote. I didn't talk about the companies we started. I didn't talk about the investments we made in tech startups in the Silicon Valley. That was all the other stuff.
Mhm.
And the more and more that as I fit in, I felt like I was belonging. Then I started to raise my hand. Then I started offering. Then I started uh, producing, contributing.
Mm.
So that was my frontal assault. Now flank. Um, I think this would be cool for any leader going back into the office tomorrow after you watch this or listen to this. Ask your folks how they have felt like they fit in lately,
Mm.
how they feel like they don't fit in lately, and listen. All right. By the way, if you ask that question, do the General Goldfein thing, right? Squint with your ears. All right. Two of these, one of these for a
Mm-hmm.
very specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can get an airman or a guardian, if I'm in the joint environment, soldier, sailor, marine, coastie, gotta remember our coasties, if I can get them to tell me where in the past 4 months they have not fit in, guess what's now compromised? Any sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can go to the other side. I can sit
Mm.
down with that airman guardian, that whoever that is, and I go, hey, what have you contributed lately to this unit, to this squadron? What have you contributed to the fight? What idea of yours has been briefed up to the squadron commander or to the wing commander? What article has PA written about the thing that you were a part of? What 1206 have you been awarded that maybe someone on the other side doesn't know that you earned? What have you contributed? Because, oh,
Mm.
by the way, if an airman looks at me and goes, sir, I don't know what I do around here. I don't know if what I do matters. I'm,
Mm.
I'm here 10, 12, 15 hours a day. And if I'm not here, then someone else is here 10, 12, 15 hours a day. So
Mm.
contribution and fitting in is arbitrated, my opinion, by belonging.
Mm.
So if I've got someone who feels like they fit in, that slides me towards the belonging. But did you catch what happened to my teeter totter? I have to bring up the contribution. If
Mm-hmm.
someone's contributing but feeling like they're being taken advantage of, then now I'm sliding down on the fitting in. I need to. Is it a balance? I'm not sure, but that's why I like the 4 month test. The human domain is complicated, and uh, there's that saying from that one philosopher. It was something like, "I think, therefore I am." There's another one that says, "I categorize, therefore I'm a human."
Mm.
And so part of our, we only had 8 days at the leader development course. We started on Tuesday, we rolled till Friday. They had a weekend over in Montgomery, unless they had great visions of Florida or Atlanta. Um, and then they graduated Thursday, and most of them would travel Friday, and then they would be back in the office. Remember my word of last year, right? 2024, my word was after. When I think to myself, I can do anything for 8 days. I can hold it together for 8 days. You can go on a long TDY and you can hold it together, right? You can put on a front. You can make sure that people see the you that you want them to see.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was Monday morning after an LDC graduation, because Kai, our goal was that these folks were 1 to 2 years away from the command position, whether that was commander, SEL, or a civilian director. So we had, call it 18 months from the Monday after graduation until they took that guide on or that position. The human domain, it's complex, it's complicated. There is not one way. There's not one way of leading. There's not one way of following. The real question is, how do I look out over a unit? I mean, I feel for my maintainers, my defenders, my FSS commanders who've got hundreds. And it's not just hundreds of airmen, guardians. They got the guardians' families. They've got the community members,
Mm-hmm.
because that fingerprint that person leaves, right? I'm thinking about my MacBook, and like I can start my MacBook with my fingerprint. Um, that fingerprint that people leave on folks. I was thinking the other day about how many people in my, I'm 53 in April, how many people in my life have I either asked me a question or given me an insight or taught me something, and they have no idea that to this day I talk about them. Like it just dawned on me. It's like how many people in that one moment they said, did, were something, and I use that as like this gospel now of my leadership life. I'm fairly confident they don't remember that day. And so if I think about LDC, this is where I just encourage everybody. If your organization, whether you're in the military or outside of the military, nonprofit, education, if your organization will fund you in doing some kind of multi-day leader development program, because I'll tell you how we built ours. We looked at every business school. We looked at every Fortune 500 company. We looked at all of the community development leadership programs, and we just picked. All right. The crew that we brought in on the military side, all the instructors, the officers, were recently graduated squadron commanders. So literally, I was teaching alongside a squadron commander who COVID hit her squadron, and that's how she finished her 18 months. And all those visions that, I mean, what's a lieutenant colonel by that time? 15, 17 years? For 15, 17 years, these people had wanted a command. They take the guide on, and then 8 months later, bam, they send everybody home. The human domain, it's complex. That's my big takeaway from LDC.
Since we're on the note of LDC, the Valor Workout, and Doug Freeman, let's talk about it.
So I shared with you day one of my Air Force experience. I read this poster about Chester McBride. One of the sessions of LDC, it was day 3 morning, as we all met at the gym, and we walked through and the way that they did the Valor Workout, and I'm trying to think of how many. We usually had 2 or 3 per year, and I taught for 4 years. So I bet we had 10 airmen that we honored. And it was unique in anything I had ever seen, right? Even the civilians that I taught alongside at LDC, there were only 2 of us who never wore the uniform. All the other civilians were either Air Force or Army. All the other folks had been around this concept of wearing the bracelet of a lost member. So there I was. And I'm thinking I'm going to go work out. Woohoo, this is great. They're telling the story, and I'm crying, and I'm looking around, and there's other people who are visibly shaken. And if it wasn't 100%, it was 90% of the Valor workouts that I was a part of. Someone in that class knew the person. And so the honoring and the taking a knee in honor of that loss. And Doug Freeman rolled in. This was my 2nd year of teaching LDC. So they all showed up in July. We had about a month to do the training of how to facilitate LDC, which a lot of people thought they were there to teach LDC. We had to break them real fast, like a Mustang. And then I want to say it was about October that Doug was writing the Valor Workout, and I'm there, and we're talking about it, and then he says his name, and I'm like, no, really, that Chester McBride. And so that was probably early on. That was one of the foot stomps that it's a small Air Force. It is a small community
Mm-hmm.
where I wasn't 6 degrees removed from Chester McBride. I was one.
I wanted to ask you if you were talking to a leader that's been in a while, whether they're like active duty, reserve, civilian, but they primarily work with people that are younger, that aren't in their quote generation. Like how might you encourage them in regards to not separate themselves and go, well, no, that's your generation. That's not mine. You guys, you just don't listen. You just like how would you encourage them, or what tips or insights would you give to them in leading those teams?
It's a really good, timely uh, question that I want to take on.
Sure.
I got two frameworks that came to my mind. Uh, Context is greater than content.
Mm,
Okay, and what this the obvious response conversation to this prompt is to talk about the content. We need to understand that there's 5 different generations in the workplace, that the airmen that you're leading were not born until after 9/11, that the concept of OIF, OEF, and coin insurgency does not compare to large scale combat operations. All of that's content.
mm-hmm.
What I would double down on is the context. And I would say, sir, ma'am, before we address whatever that rock is on the table, can we make a list of in the most Einsteinian use of the word, Richard Feynman use of the term? Can we identify the problems that you think you're facing?
Mm,
Because until I walk in, and if I'm in a skiff, until I walk in and can see the problems that they're facing on the wall, right? I don't know how to have the contextual conversation and what content to bring in.
mm,
Content, right? I mean, there's a great book that AU published called Operational Planning. I packed it to bring it with me to Colorado Springs. Centers of gravity, lines of effort, OV1. The reason that we have those kinds of things is because they're all graphics. And the concept is that they're attempting to describe or explain the problem that we're facing. Because what I found is that if I can get the problem, I mean, what did Einstein say? If he would spend 55, if he had an hour to solve a problem, he'd spend 55 minutes defining the question, and then he'd answer it in 5 minutes. And right now, I think we have people who are spending 55 minutes trying to figure out what the problem actually is, and then the meeting's over. So I
mm-hmm.
picked up this one here. It's called The Strategic Direction of World War II.
Mm.
And I was reading this at breakfast the other day. My wife was ecstatic. I can tell you that right now. Um, but there was a line in here that one of the generals said, our adversary was, and they gave the name of the Axis country. The adversary is the Axis. Our enemy is the Navy.
Mm.
And I have to wonder, on the Joint Chiefs right now, if I could get into that room, are there still people who look across the table competing for money, competing for manning, competing for
Mm.
equipment?
Right.
And yes, and yes. And so
Mm.
in my brain, when I think about the generational differences, um, we are we are generations away from what our grandparents, and for currently serving great grandparents, what they woke up to every morning in the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
I've got everybody talking about, there's a certain retired general from a major command who has been writing a lot more lately, now that he's not wearing uniform, about the concerns that he has going forward.
Mm,
Context.
mm,
Clarify the context. If I have value, and I think I do because they've kept me around for a while, it's people will walk away from a facilitation realizing they've clarified the context.
mm,
Now the content will simply arise, right? And if you want the psychological aspect of that, it's called the reticular activating system, the RAS. All right, you look it up on Google. The reticular activating system is the part of the brain that we program to notice something important, and then it will see it.
mm,
If it's not important, it won't see it. All right?
mm,
My favorite example of this is for the past 6 years, it'll be 6 years in 19 days. For the past 6 years, I notice someone in uniform hundreds of yards away. I am sure going through airports, shopping at the grocery store, wandering around the community, I know that for the first 47 years of my life, there were people in uniforms around me. Didn't notice them. I know often when I walk into a room with my job, I'm the only. I can't tell you how many times I have walked into a room and I am the only person wearing a suit.
mm,
I have programmed my mind to notice. So that's my ask of all of you is instead of focusing on the content and how we are different, recognize and clarify the context in the form of a problem statement. And then I want people who look at that thing differently than me. I need people to look at that thing differently. I just sounded like Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. I need them on that wall.
That's great. I love it. Has there been anything that's been on your mind? Say, let's say 30 days. Is there anything that, whether it's in things that you've been reading, or maybe podcasts you've been like listening to, or just the crowd that you keep? Has there been anything that's been on your mind the past 30 days that you're just like, you know what, I want to talk about this?
I was doing the math. I think I'm at three, either colleagues or good friends in the
Hmm.
past. And if you give me all the way back to October, so
Okay.
just give me a few extra days.
Sure. Got you.
I'm at three people who have lost parents.
Mm,
Uh, what is on my mind is the unshared grief and the unshared concern that the people I serve have, that they have had to compartmentalize when they cross the gate. That they
mm,
show that cap, they go park, they walk into an office, someone sees them and asks them the Air Force question, "How are you?" And they give the Air Force answer, "Living the dream.
mm-hmm,
Another day in paradise."
mm-hmm,
Great. I
mm-hmm,
know. I trust in my heart that there are aspects of that person's life that are a nightmare,
mm-hmm,
that are terrible, and that hurt a lot.
mm-hmm,
I I have some things to do about it where there's conflict is we have a job to do. We have humans doing those jobs.
yeah.
So as and this is how my brain works, you started this conversation off with the terms AI, to which I always have to reply, which AI are you talking about? All right. Are we talking about large language models? Are we talking about generative AI? Are we
Mm-hmm.
talking about general intelligence or specific intelligence? Um, Anytime someone complains about AI, I said, great, I want you to type in email, turn off spell check for the rest of your career.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to turn off spell check. Spell check has been my
Mm-hmm.
AI since,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Um, where I wonder is if I look at I'm a civilian, so I'm supposed to work 40 hours a week. If I look at my 40 hours of work per week, where can efficiency give me the 2 to 3 hours a week to go meet with mental health, to go do my PT, to make sure that I eat appropriately, to heck, not work overtime, and to be back with my family at night. So, past 30 plus days, what's been on my mind is the amount of grief and worry that the people that I work alongside have, that we don't have a mechanism in the workplace to completely factor in.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we're waiting for people to break before we support them.